Jaguars.com coverage of the 2024 NFL Scouting Combine continues. JP Shadrick with ESPN NFL Draft Analyst Jordan Reid. Good to see you again, and here we are, another combine.
Yeah.
It comes every year, and it gets bigger and bigger.
I can't believe it's been 365 days since I've seen you. These things go by fast, but I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and you know what? The Jaguars are in a little different ballpark than they thought they would be coming into this one. You know, after the 8-3 start last year, the collapse, lost 5 of 6, and now missed the playoffs, and they're right there middle of the pack in the first round. Let's start at the Jaguars at 17. What kind of place are they in this NFL draft, and will they have a first-round, blue-chip caliber talent that far down?
Yeah, I think so. I think they need help at some spots. Cornerback is one area I could see them look to add, maybe even another wide receiver. And luckily for them, this is a very deep wide receiver class. And also, I think it's a deep corner class through the first 2 days of the draft. So whether it's adding a certain player like a Brian Thomas Jr. of LSU or a Quinion Mitchell of Toledo, I think they're in prime range to do that.
It feels like that is going to be the case, the wide receiver part of it, for a long time to come. Just the way the college game's played now, the way kids coming up before college all want to be receivers now.
Yeah, everybody wants to touch the ball.
Nobody wants to be a running back anymore, right? Look
anymore.
At the paychecks.
Yeah.
So it feels like the wide receiver is going to be where it's at for a long time to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're in such a culture, what I call 7-on-7 culture, of where every kid coming up, they're so used to being in those 7-on-7 games of where I want to touch the ball. And I tell all these kids all the time, go over there and see you can backpedal and play defensive back. Just because these receiver lines are long at football camps. There's like 200 kids in the receiver line, and then you look over the defensive back line, there's like 3 kids over there. So we're in such a 7-on-7 culture. But once again, going back to the draft, that's why we're seeing so many strong wide receiver classes on top of each other, just because that's the culture and the nature of today's football.
It's interesting what the Jaguars may or may not do at that position. When the Calvin Ridley stuff's up in the air, Christian Kirk's coming back, Zay Jones coming off an injury-filled season, but at some point, some things will have to change in the coming years there. So, I don't know if it's a number one priority now, but in a year or two time, wide receivers, you're going to have some of those guys around.
Yeah, I agree. I think they do need another weapon for Trevor Lawrence, regardless of what happens with Calvin Ridley. And I would like to see them get a field stretcher, just because I think they have a lot of guys that are very similar as far as their skill set right now. And when I think of him in his glory days at Clemson, I think of those big outside targets, whether it's T. Higgins and guys like that. So Mike Williams is another. So just having those big outside targets, I think that's something that's really lacking in Jacksonville's offense right now. Somebody that he can just throw the ball up to and go up and get it.
Unfortunately, T. Higgins is tagged, I guess. He's not going to make it down to Jacksonville. Jordan Reid with us. To the cornerback position, talking about backpedaling, and that is it's a new defensive coordinator, right? Coming in. His corners historically play tight, bump and run coverage. You got to have that kind of skill set to do that. It's a deep class, but take us through the top part of that. Are there guys that can fit that bill?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a man cover corner class overall. And the first one you're going to hear about is Tyrion Arnold of Alabama, who I think is the most athletically gifted and versatile corner in this class. He actually was a safety when he first got to Alabama, so he's transitioned his way forward in the defense, working from safety to nickel. He played predominantly nickel and outside last year, so having that type of flexibility is something that you really don't see from cornerbacks in today's day and age entering the draft, maybe more so of when they go into their playing career in the NFL. But entering your career, having experience at safety, nickel, and outside corner, that's very rarely seen. So Tyrion Arnold definitely is one name, but one name I'm going to keep bringing up that I think Jacksonville fans should have circled is Quinion Mitchell from Toledo. I thought at the Senior Bowl he was the best player there, regardless of position. And those group of 5 players, what you always want to see is how they adjust to the speed of the game at events like the Senior Bowl or when they're playing in what I call those up games. So he played against Ohio State his junior year. He was terrific in that game. And then he played against Illinois last year, and he was really good in that game too. So he just continues to check boxes throughout the process. So Tyrion Arnold and then also Quinion Mitchell would be 2 names I keep an eye on.
Yeah, what was so good about his Senior Bowl practices themselves? And that's what everybody looks at, obviously, is the practice part of it. Was it just the hanging with all the speed guys and everything?
Yeah, so if he was to mistakenly pick up an Alabama helmet and put it on, you wouldn't have noticed the difference with him. The athleticism, the fluidity, and just the movement skills with him, I thought it was very natural. And he was able to remain sticky in coverage with every single type of receiver down in Mobile.
Jordan Reid with us. Offensive line has been a topic this offseason for Jaguar fans, obviously. There was so much change up front last year. Trevor Lawrence was banged up a good bit. There's all that. So where can you find some value on the interior of the offensive line maybe in this draft?
I think the third round is probably the sweet spot. The center class is really good. It's a little top-heavy, but it's really good. Jackson Powers Johnson of Oregon is one name you'll hear quite a bit. Zach Frazier of West Virginia is another, and then Graham Barton of Duke that kind of has that inside-outside versatility. He's had experience at center guard as well as tackle. So 3 first-round guys potentially at center, depending on how they feel about Luke Fortner moving forward. But the interior, as far as guards, I think the third round is probably the sweet spot of where you're looking at some of those guys to come off the board.
And then, on the other side of the ball, too, big bodies are key. And, this is Josh Allen's going to be back around. Trayvon Walker came on strong at the end of the year. Those are the base guys on this defense. You got some guys on the interior the Jaguars do that are under some contracts, and they're going to be around, but they didn't fare well against the run. I mean, late in the season they faltered there, and it feels like they might have to find something to bolster that run defense. Where do you find that?
Yeah, once again, you're going to hear 2 names in the first round, whether it's Johnny Newton of Illinois and then also Byron Murphy II of Texas. Those are your 2 bona fide first-round guys. But after that, probably the second or the third round is where most of the depth is in this class. And then after that, it gets a little bit sketchy. It's a little bit of a precipitous drop-off. So you're talking about Braden Fisk of Florida State, a name that has a lot of buzz right now. Rook Arroyo from Clemson is another name that has quite a bit of buzz too.
It's a long list for the Jaguars that could be done, right? Yeah. So as an organization now moving ahead, excuse me, we heard from Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke of needs and things. There's got to be a collective front on how to move forward from a collapse like that. There's some really difficult meetings that happen right after a season. But you got to make the moves and move forward. It starts, though, with pending free agents, and then you'll figure out what's out there in free agency, and then the draft coming up after that. So 30,000-foot view of the Jaguars, are they in a good spot, you think, to make some of these picks, get some things done in free agency, and get back to the top in the division?
I think so. I think anytime you have a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, and I know he was really inconsistent last year, but I think eventually he's going to figure it out. They're going to get some better personnel around him, got to fortify some spots up front, which I think they will. But defensively, I thought they showed some flashes last year. They have a lot of talent and a lot of building blocks on defense. Now it's time to get some more pieces along the perimeter. I think they can add another player or 2 there to help them out to fortify that offensive line, and then some perimeter targets as well. But I think they'll be just fine. It's just you can't just flame out at the end of the year. And even though they started 8-3, it was really disappointing to see how they finished down the backstretch of the year. But when it all came together for them, you saw a young team that had a very, very bright future. But we just need to see those flashes throughout the duration of the season as opposed to through the first 11 games.
You're still believing in Trevor overall, right?
Yeah. I'm still a believer in Trevor. He just has to be more consistent. And we saw a lot of those flashes throughout the season. But now we have to bundle all those traits together, get him, Press Taylor, and then Doug Peterson together on the same page, and then just understanding what Trevor does well and just continue to execute those plays that he does well.
All right, Jordan, who has the biggest combine? What name will be the buzz name coming out of Indianapolis?
You already know the name I'm going to say, Quinny Mitchell. I'm going to keep riding that name all the way to the end. I think it wouldn't surprise me exiting the combine if he starts to hear a buzz as possibly being the first cornerback taken over Tyrion Arnold. That would not surprise me at all, just because I think he's going to run in the mid to low 4.3s. He's probably going to jump 40-plus in the vertical. He may even exceed 11 feet in the broad jump, which is
Who is this guy? Wow.
Yeah, he's a mutant, man. He's a really, really good player.
Hey, appreciate the time as always. Good luck to you this week.
Absolutely.
Jordan.
Thanks as always.
Jordan Reid joining us from ESPN here at the NFL Scouting Combine.